Hello, everybody. We're going to give it one more minute and then we will get started. Okay, so we are going to jump in. I know we're coming from a very thoughtful keynote to a very fast and fun and engaging session. So welcome. I am Nicole. I am the president of the VEX group, and we are joined by members of the AAM PRAM team. And this is a session that we do at AAM generally. And I think we got the highest attendance, right, Tim?
Correct.
From AAM this year. So a lot of fun. It's like rapid fire. So Tim is gonna take it away and we'll be hearing from all of us very soon. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Hallman, Director of Communications and Business Development at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. I am a white male with blonde, grayish hair and black glasses, and I am sitting in my office at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, which is the part of the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. I am a member of PRAM, the PR and Marketing Professional Network of the American Alliance of Museums, and I'm delighted to partner with VEX on presenting this hopefully engaging, thoughtful way of keeping people engaged at our institutions. Excuse me. I'd like to invite my colleagues to introduce themselves. Nicole, why don't you give a bit more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Nicole. I am a white female, red curly hair, sitting against a white VEX background. My day job, along with VEX, is manager of membership and outreach at Longwood Gardens, which is right outside of Philadelphia in a town called Kennett Square, mushroom capital of the world. Thrilled to be here. I'm very excited to host this session.
Eric, go ahead.
Thank you. Name is Erick Orellana. Currently Latino male with black hair. Just like Tim, residing in Oakland, so it's the ancestral land of the Ohlone. I am currently the lead for Bay Area VEX, a professional workshop series for visitor experience colleagues in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm also the current visitor experience lead at the USS Hornet Sea Air and Space Museum. And then overall, I've been in the visitor experience and museum field for 8 years.
Wanessa.
Yes, and I'm Wanessa Tillman. I'm the Director of Visitor Services at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. And I am African-American with short, kind of salty pepper hair and glasses, sitting at my desk in the Gardner Museum, which happens to reside on the land of the Massachusetts tribe. And I am thrilled to be here again and a fan of everything VEX and all of that. So, yay. Thrilled to be with you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all. The purpose of this session is to share the good work of colleagues and organizations in our field during trying times, celebrate their professionalism and service, and inspire new and next practices as we strive for reestablishing human connections to our organizations. In the spirit of fellowship, I express my deepest thanks to all of you for your commitment and resilience over the past 18 months. We've sacrificed so much, encountered heartbreaking loss, personal and professional, and faced the unrelenting pressure of uncertainty, compounded by isolation, fear for the security of ourselves and our organizations, and anxiety about what's to come. In the spirit of that gratitude, we invite you to participate by sharing your ideas, perhaps things that from your organization that you're proud of, things that will inform and inspire colleagues here. Throughout the session, we'll take breaks specifically to highlight ideas from you. At any time, feel free to add them in the chat, and please include links when possible to help colleagues learn more. And if we have the time and the ability, we will actually invite you to raise your hand and then also join the conversation. So without further ado, let's get started. We're going to break up our presentation into 3 basic sections under themes. And the first theme is engage. Some of you might be familiar with this. Last year, it was the cowboy hat wearing security officer at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum who became the social media star. This year, Howard Hatch, a 80-something volunteer at the Sacramento History Museum, emerged as the hero of that museum's TikTok account. Like most museums during the pandemic, Hatch's museum closed its doors to the public due to the pandemic and enlivened their social media efforts, including setting up a TikTok account. In viral videos, Howard gives demonstrations of historic printing presses while dispensing facts and printing puns. The speed at which his videos travel on social media apps surprised Hatch, which his printing press cranks out some 500 pages an hour. Hatch told NPR, "I just don't get it." When mentioned in museum's most watched video with more than 17 million views, maybe it is the power of the press. The Museum in Philadelphia offered a playful twist on their popular Escape the Room activity with a virtual version called Escape the Muter. In the Muter's version, players sneak into the Muter Museum at night only to find they're trapped. They're challenged to find their way out by collecting clues and solving puzzles while learning about the diverse virtual and in-person programs the museum has to offer. They also offer a descriptive text-based version for players who are blind or have low vision. As part of a series of new digital initiatives, the new museum in New York presents Bedtime Stories, a project initiated by the artist Maurizio Catalan. In finding friends and other artists and performers he admires to keep us company, Catalan imagined bedtime stories as a way of staying together during these days of isolation. Each participant has been asked to read a selection from their favorite book, a sentence, a passage, a chapter, or more, to be shared with the new museum's online audiences. Some chose to read existing works, others to read their own writings, still others to create impromptu performances. Whether drawn from memory, imagination, or cherished volumes kept close at hand, the recordings by artists were captured quickly in an unfiltered fashion on phones or laptops in their homes or studios around the world. In celebration of the DeYoung Museum's 125th anniversary, the Fine Arts Museums in San Francisco are hosted the DeYoung Open, a juried community art exhibition of submissions by artists who live in the 9 Bay Area counties. Works of art in the DeYoung Open are hung salon style, installed edge to edge and floor to ceiling, which enables the maximum number of works to be displayed. DeYoung filled 12,000 square foot exhibition galleries with 877 artworks by 762 Bay Area artists. The DeYoung continues the museum's longstanding tradition of engaging the local community and showcasing this talent of Bay Area artists who offer their pieces for sale and retain 100% of the proceeds. Access to the DeYoung Open web gallery continues to be available.
Up next, we have the Museum of New Zealand. The Museum of New Zealand's little page of calm provides its visitors with something that I'm pretty sure we could all use more of. The little page of calm features countless activities, all designed to introduce a little bit of calmness to your world. Some of the activities include jigsaw puzzles, quizzes that help you learn new things, a video of a sunset, and a collection of animals. The Museum of Contemporary Art. Our front of house staff are usually the beacons of knowledge and recommendations for our guests as they navigate all of our respected spaces. With their museum closed early last year, the front of house staff at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles turned to social media to re-engage with the museum's audience. Their videos range from getting to know the Museum of Contemporary Art's outdoor exhibits to learning a little more about little-known landmarks near their home in Little Tokyo, Los Angeles. Children's Museum in Houston launched All-Time Access, an online initiative to enhance distance learning. This allowed them to open the museum to families all over the world from a completely digital landscape. With the majority of children starting school this year virtually, this program is a welcome addition for parents and children as new resources are now made available to them regardless of their physical location. The participants were able to explore project and pursue topics of interest to them as they connected these lessons to what they will be learning in the new school year. Live performances, pop-up virtual adventure camps, along with opportunity to submit questions directly to museum's educators. My home organization, the USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum, created, developed, and shared lesson plans that can be found on their website. The lessons plans were developed through an education fellowship called STEM-H and was offered by the Naval Historical Foundation at the United States Navy Museum. The program saw teachers from around the country spend a week at the museum and its related galleries to design a lesson plan incorporating naval history and STEM. For instance, a lesson plan on sonar was developed using Cold War gallery and its submarine artifacts. Other lesson plans available include crashless landing, the design process of Apollo 11, and tower building, physics and technology aboard the USS Hornet. The Shed Aquarium Stay Home video and activity series allowed its viewers to embark on a journey as an animal scientist. The Shed Aquarium also provided a free download science journal for those ready to learn about ocean life. The episodic series covered specific animals such as penguins, sharks, and turtles, and answered questions like, what's life like for a penguin, or how do sharks contribute to the ocean's ecosystem? And the Bay Area Discovery, like many other institutions, had to reimagine their spaces as their indoor locations were closed due to the pandemic. Bay Area Discovery transformed their parking lot into an interactive outdoor exhibit. The toddler pop-up gave its young visitors a chance to practice their balance and coordination skills while exploring exciting new obstacles with a pretty neat background.
So at Longwood Gardens, as many organizations did, a lot of our content shifted virtually, and we are still very much in the virtual world while still kind of coming back on site. But for that meant new virtual benefits for members to keep people engaged with the gardens from their couch. So this was an opportunity to really get away from our elevated tone, how we generally talk to people, and have a little bit more fun, which was really, it was fun for the staff. So we ended up creating our own jigsaw puzzles, virtual jigsaw puzzles, crossword puzzles. We had word searches. Engagement was very high, continues to be very high. And if I don't update it enough, we're getting emails asking us when we're going to be updating it. Next slide, Tim. So the Black Country Living Museum was, as we all were, closed to visitors, but it ended up becoming the most followed in the world on TikTok. So they thought it was a great way of connecting with the kids who might never have heard of the museum and the Industrial Revolution. So volunteers as well as staff made their own short educational TikToks. I'm not on TikTok, so I have not seen them, but I highly recommend checking it out. But in one, there is a mother making lunch, a Victorian-packed lunch for her little child, spreading pork drippings on bread, wrapping the sandwiches in cloth. So check those out if you are a TikTok person. Next. So we saw a lot of collaboration in a way that we never have before. So this was an initiative of botanical gardens all over the US, but all over the country. It was called Our Gardens Your Home. It was spearheaded by Longwood, but we got all these other organizations involved, and really a chance for gardens to highlight their individual collections, share knowledge, and engage their followers. So this was a picture that we took about halfway in. This is staff from all over the country. But there was other hashtags that started trending during this time: Museum from Home, Muse Social, Why I Love Museums, Archives hashtag party, and Art Can Help. So a lot of these are continuing on even after the pandemic. The Talon Art Hall featured high resolution virtual walkthroughs of their exhibit. So the Estonian Ministry of Culture declared 2020 the year of digital culture. However, that was before the pandemic. So the pandemic just exacerbated that declaration. But the Talon really made it so that anybody anywhere could get really in depth within these exhibits, really wanting to give differently abled visitors and those living all over the world a chance to interact with their content from home. But the goal was really to make this live on for just the pandemic, and actually they created a code that many cultural institutions could actually embed and use for themselves. So kudos to them.
Nicole, did I skip one?
I don't think so.
Okay, good.
The Cleveland Museum of Art, so I think they're in here a couple times, presented their stories from storage. And this was really an example of the museum putting an emphasis on their permanent collection versus these temporary exhibitions. Because as many people know, the last couple decades, definitely with the surgence of tourists and museums, we've definitely done a lot of more temporary exhibitions rather than really highlighting permanent collections. So, and as the pandemic has shrunk budgets, how are we what we already have? So this is just a reaffirmation of a collection that the potential of what we already own has never exhausted. Next slide. So the Barnes Foundation, very similar to the Talent Art Hall, really digitized their collection. So during the pandemic, they started sending out these daily servings of art to their subscriber email list every day. I was getting them every day, a lot of work. But in each short video, there was a curator or a scholar talking about a piece in their collection. So they took this and digitized it, and they used a tool called Deep Zoom, developed by Microsoft, but it lets the user really dive into this piece of art where you're seeing the brushstrokes on the canvas and the nubs of paint, all of that. Additionally, the Barnes also created a reopening playbook in conjunction with Jefferson University. And through that, they've also created this new technology called Temi Social Robot. And if anybody from the Barnes is on that would like to tell us more, please do. But guests essentially scan a QR code. They get an individual QR code to the robot's face. And as they enter each gallery, the robot alerts the staff if the gallery, that piece of the gallery or the exhibition is getting too full, so that they can let guests know that they need to wait. Next slide. So back at Longwood, we took advantage of March Madness and we did Plant Madness. So very popular during the spring season. We took all of our kind of spring flowering plants and we created this bracket, and we had people vote on them over 5 weeks till there was an ultimate winner. No surprise, it was the tulip for us, but we got incredible engagement out of it, and we're actually hoping to continue this in some form, maybe with different seasons. And over to Wanessa.
Great, thank you. So just like plants and gardens brought a lot of joy to people during the quarantine, so about animals. I mean, animals, they're fabulous. So zoos, another type of attraction that, you just couldn't close the doors and forget them, because of course it's a living collection. So we saw many new and fun ways that zoos took advantage, including some home safaris by the Cincinnati Zoo that feature behind the scenes visits, animals enjoying enrichment. And we also saw drive-through zoos in San Antonio and elsewhere. And the Philly Zoo, one of my favorites, did a live weekday video, Zoo at 2, which you can check. Okay, next one. At the Albright Knox Art Gallery, they had an artwork showdown, and basically Their strategy was an online showdown of artworks. Museums submit from their own collections. So every 24 hours, the museum matched up 2 works submitted online and letting its followers vote on the winner to provide fun points of entry for conversations on aesthetics and art history. So instead of just talking about themselves, they were able to engage each year with 15 different museums across the US and Canada with fun elements of rivalry and competition. And with the hashtag Museum from Home Challenge, the aim was to inspire people to promote their home museums in the same way they would their favorite teams. And this one is actually fascinating, one of my favorites. A museum I had never even heard of called the Wellcome Collection, which I believe is in the UK, and they put together a digital display of quarantine imagery across the centuries. The Wellcome Collection focuses on challenging people's views of how they feel about health. And so they went through past times or when quarantines were necessary and showed illustrations of how those happened throughout history. But definitely check that out, it's fascinating. And okay, this museum, the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, their director, actually, Rain Wolfs, has been walking through the collection galleries with a single camera phone and basically riffing on paintings. So the director of the museum is taking you through the galleries and basically having an online tour pointing out different paintings and their meanings. So it definitely makes him more accessible and presents the art in that museum in a different way. And they are doing that through YouTube. And at the Getty Museum, last minute Michelangelo videos were shot in the last hours before staff left, that reflect the poignant moment when we temporarily shut our doors. So on the way out. So in the last few hours they had at the Getty Museum before all staff left the building as part of Los Angeles' Safer at Home initiative. They shot some short videos in the exhibition Michelangelo, Mind of the Master. They were shot hurriedly and they had no time to prepare, but now they're really glad that they did that. And who doesn't like a good puzzle? So the Akron Art Museum solicited clues from peer institutions based on their collections, then compiled them into a weekly puzzle. And if the patrons can't come to us, couldn't come to them, they found ways to meet them where they were. Many people needed a diversion and some entertainment, and museums have long served this need. In an effort to continue letting people enjoy themselves with museums, they're starting a new global initiative, #Museum Games. So on Sundays, museums around will post the clues for different puzzles on their social media platform. And evidently over 30 museums contributed clues to the crossword.
The Los Angeles County Museum of Art partnered with Snapchat to create a new initiative using augmented reality to explore monuments and murals, representation, and history. Called Monumental Perspectives, it brought together artists and technologists to create virtual monuments that explore just some of the histories of Los Angeles communities in an effort to highlight perspectives from across the region. In consultation with community leaders and historians, the first cohort of artists examined key moments, figures, and monumentality in the region's past and present through augmented reality experiences. Visitors can experience the augmented reality monuments at site-specific locations across Los Angeles, including LACMA's Wilshire Boulevard campus, MacArthur Park, and Irvin Magic Johnson Park. The monuments can also be experienced by anyone around the world, wherever they are. You can find more out at lacma.org. Here's a clever design solution for social distancing. An elegant solution was the strategic mowing of the overgrown garden at Elbląg's Centrum Galleria in Poland, an art center that occupies a cavernous Gothic church. The gallery director, who trained as an architect, devised the checkerboard concept to help visitors picnic on the grass. After measuring space for blankets, she realized that most of them were the same size, 6 feet by 6 feet, as social distance requirements outlined. She made a sketch, and her only investment was paying a gardener $50 to mow the squares. The gallery moved its summer concerts, usually held inside the church, to the lawn, which became a sensation on Instagram and other media. Marketing for the moment, the Morton Arboretum in Illinois pivoted all marketing and advertising during the pandemic. Once the 1,700-acre site reopened to the public, seasonal campaigns positioned the natural retreat in ample space for respite and escape.
And at the Mount Cuba Center, they made a video of their entrance experience during COVID for those who may have felt uneasy about visiting without knowing what to expect. They've been trying to emphasize the know before you go component of their pre-visit communications. And then at the Discovery Museum, which is basically a children's museum, they had special access hours that championed accessibility and inclusion, and they were called Especially for Me. So at specific hours on specific days, they would welcome in children with different abilities so that they could each participate in a great experience at a museum.
Can't
Eric,
hear
I
you,
think this
Eric.
one's yours.
How about now?
Yep.
Good.
There we go. Carnegie Museum of Natural History. They have embraced the popular social media app TikTok. The museum used it as an opportunity to demystify science and make it more accessible for everyone. One of the museum's most popular series features Tim Pierce, head of the section of mollusks, where he shares not just amazing snail facts, but also amazing snails jokes. The California Academy of Sciences began offering free live streams taught by the professional educators. The lessons are not just broadcasted live, but also uploaded to the Academy's YouTube channel for free and for everyone to watch. Events broadcasted and recorded feature hands-on activities or kinesthetic movements that students can do from home while tuning in. The virtual docent program brings the Academy's experts, animals, and collection to students all over the internet free of charge. Monterey Bay Aquarium has begun providing virtual tours of the virtual museum located within the game Animal Crossing. The Monterey Bay Aquarium staff live streams their adventures on twitch.tv/MontereyAQ as they discover the numerous animals, bugs, and fossils the game has to offer. As Monterey staff comes across new discoveries, they also welcome various experts from the aquarium and other institutions to provide further insight for their viewers. In addition, they also have added live captions under each of their webcams to increase the accessibility of each of their live streams. SF MoMA began using NextMe as a virtual waitlist system to help control gallery capacities and eliminate in-person lines. The system was originally designed as a restaurant and office reservation system. Visitors can sign up with a QR code or be entered into it manually by the staff. Once registered, the staff sends out notification to the guests so that they may enter the exhibit based on capacity. The goal of the new queue system is to try and limit in-person lines, and the feedback from guests have been overly positive as visitors appreciate the ability to explore the museum while waiting to enter the exhibition. The Detroit Institute of Arts, throughout the pandemic, masks have become a way of keeping us safe. And as we incorporated them into our daily lives, we also have looked for ways to spice them up a bit. The Detroit Institute of Arts assisted in doing that as they shifted many of their wonderful pieces from their galleries and made them available for their patrons to proudly wear on their mask. that would help them protect each other and take a piece of the Detroit Institute of Art's wisdom at the same time. Some works made available on the mask include The Scream by Edward Munch, Hummingbirds and Orchids by Martin Johnson Heed, and Rounded Flower Bed by Monet.
All right, so the Philbrook Museum of Art in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the first museum to accession cats into their collection. So for many guests, the most popular attraction in the Philbrook Gardens are their two cats, Perilla and Cleome. While they do provide some level of pest control, their main job is to bring smiles to the faces of visitors and provide an endless amount of social media gold. So next time you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, look for them on your next visit. And they also, during the pandemic, launched a letter writing campaign so you could get a note directly from one of these cats that are now in their collection. So that was another way that they used to keep them in people's front of mind, since they couldn't interact with them in person.
Thank you. That was quite a long list of ideas of colleagues throughout the country coming up with wonderful ways to keep people engaged during the pandemic and afterwards, and hopefully will inspire some of you. We welcome you now to share some of your ideas. If you have some things, go ahead, write them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you so you can join the conversation. If there are no takers, we'll continue the conversation with our list in a new section. Just a reminder, you can join anytime, offer an idea through chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you during the next break. Thanks. So the next section is called service, wonderful ideas of keeping, servicing the field and keeping everyone smartly participating in ways to keep museums strong. Here's one from the Broad Museum in Los Angeles. The Diversity Apprentice Program is an initiative by the Broad. It is made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Every year, 8 apprentices are selected for the Diversity Apprenticeship Program. Each apprentice participates in 1 month of paid training and then continues to build on the skills they learn through 8 months of paid hands-on work at partner sites across Los Angeles. Throughout, they provide personalized support for each apprentice as they build the skills and confidence to start a career in the museum field. The National Civil Rights Museum is launching a platform that reminds everyone that their vote matters. The museum launched Imagine in America, a digital platform that heightens awareness of the privilege and necessity of voting. Hashtag Imagine in America encourages us to get out and vote no matter what we feel in terms of our politics. It connects voters to resources that enable community activism and accountability. While the initiative is designed to engage young voters, first-time voters, and non-voters, its goal is to reach across generations, ethnicities, and political ideologies to mobilize citizens to envision a nation that lives up to its democratic ideals.
Longwood Gardens, many others, became COVID testing and vaccine sites. So we actually handed over one of our parking lots to the county, and due to limited capacities on people visiting the gardens, we were able to be of service to the community in this way, as I know many other museums around the country did as well. Next. And I promise I won't just talk about Longwood Gardens. So we also repurposed expertise. So while we were closed, we wanted to retain as many staff as we could. So full-time staff whose hours were not necessarily being met in the ways that they typically would be, we actually reused their expertise in different areas of the gardens. Since we are a living museum, we had plants that needed to be taken care of on a daily basis. So staff worked shifts, they came in, we had a We Can Do It campaign. So this is somebody that administration and HR, and she's weeding and watering the plants. So it was all done in a socially distant way. We did reopen last June, but we kept staff working in this way since capacities were still lowered. But I think it created a lot of cross-cultural collaboration and gave a greater appreciation to what some other staff do throughout the gardens. Next. So the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources created a Park and Learn project, which is part of a broader effort of this organization called North Carolina Student Connect, but they provided free high-speed Wi-Fi access to students in the rural areas of North Carolina. So this project actually installed Wi-Fi hotspots at over 200 sites, and it will bring access to more than 350 locations through state parks, historic sites, along with libraries and schools. So they also purchased another 84,000 hotspots that they're distributing to schools and school systems. So it's a great service that they're doing throughout the state.
The Shed Aquarium is almost always included in our annual recap of ideas, and this year we're highlighting their efforts in the fight against the coronavirus. The aquarium, which has kept Chicagoans' spirits up by posting videos of its penguins, porcupine, and other creatures, loaned out laboratory equipment to the Illinois Department of Public Health so it can be used for COVID-19 tests. The equipment, called the Kingfisher, and one of only a few robotic extraction devices in Illinois, was used to extract DNA and RNA from biological samples, which is the first step in coronavirus testing. When done manually, the process is extremely time consuming, but using the machine saves time. While it might take an entire day to process 20 samples by hand, the machine can do up to 90 samples in half the time. Kudos to the Shed.
So up to Canada, the Canadian Museum of Human Rights is collecting videos and organizing an online exhibition of personal stories around COVID-19. So there's these questions when you go on there that prompt you. You can upload a video of yourself answering these questions, or you can just go explore what other people have said and other people's stories as they have lived through this time. History Colorado is in here a couple times. Again, it's about documenting these stories of COVID. So they also wanted people to submit their experiences with COVID-19, how life changed in their community, so that in the future we can look back and see what we had to say. So they called it Museum of Memory, and it's still active. And also important to note, during over the last year, the History Colorado Center was actually damaged the weekend of May 29th during mass gatherings after dark, after they were closed. So while working to clean up, staff members also collected projectiles, cans of spray paint, and a placard reading, "Love is the only answer," that was left on the street outside. So along with these online stories, they're actually taking these items that were left and documentary photographs to see if they will be added to the organization's collection.
Since April 2020, the Museum of Homelessness, in partnership with Streets Kitchen, has been operating a food, supplies, and support hub in London, England, which is actively responding to the COVID crisis. The hub is the base for their homelessness task force and operates every day of the week. The homeless task force includes over 100 amazing volunteers who have experience in outreach, mental health, nursing, and they even have a vet. The hub has safeguarding structures built into the work and reflective practice for their volunteers doing frontline work. Over to the Queens. They have a long history of community engaged work, and over the past year, they found ways to build upon that legacy. At various parts, the museum has hosted a COVID-19 testing site, a voter registration hub, a protest banner making station, held vigils for the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, as well as a food pantry that has served over 23,000 families and will continue indefinitely. Another program, there was the Year of Uncertainty, or U, an 18-month-long program where the museum is partnering with 9 diverse community groups, 7 resident artists, and 12 advisory co-thinkers to explore how it can better serve and respond to hyperlocal needs. The thinking is, they don't know what lies ahead for the city, so let's enlist artists and community groups to collaborate on projects that the public will start to see this fall. Here's how it'll work. The co-thinkers with the background in design, visual art performance, fashion, and criticism will lead learning sessions with the artists and community partners. The artists, community partners will have a free studio space in the museum and receive $5,000 stipends for their work, along with $5,000 for participating in education initiatives and a $10,000 budget to produce public-facing work. A little more from the Queens Museum. They also served as a food distribution site during the pandemic. Corona Queens suffered more cases of coronavirus and more deaths than any neighborhood in one of the hardest hit cities in the world. As Black, Brown, and immigrant communities were heavily impacted by COVID-19 across the country, the largely immigrant communities living in Corona faced devastating loss and food insecurity due to unemployment and unequal access to resources and government assistance. In order to help alleviate the demand of existing food pantries and relief efforts in Corona, the La Jornada and together We Can food pantries at Queens Museum served up to 1,000 families weekly on Wednesdays, distributing a week's worth of fresh food and non-perishable food items. El Pueblo History Museum, since the start of the pandemic, the museum stepped up for its community by becoming a grab-and-go lunch site for the local Pueblo City schools. At their site, students under the age of 18 are able to pick up meal kits. These meal kits include lunch and dinner and are enough for 3 days' worth. The El Pueblo History Museum also collected and donated supplies for the elder community members in collaboration with Pueblo's Catholic charities. Early this year, millions of Texans were impacted by Snowstorm Uri. The International Museum of Art and Science, located in McAllen, Texas, wasn't hit as hard as some of the other parts in Texas, and it quickly transitioned itself into a daytime warming center. They waived admission to welcome their neighbors without power, and to keep within CDC guidelines, they prepared to meet 50% capacity, and per usual policy, asked visitors to practice social distancing and required guests to wear face masks when on museum campus. Staff quickly turned out their out of service due to COVID-19 hands-on areas into charging stations and spaced out tables and extension cords. A supply station was created by the staff that offered hand sanitizer, writing tools for any folks who made use of their public Wi-Fi, whether it be for school or for office work.
Another example of a museum using their space for the community is the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, their watershed location. So in the ICA watershed opened in the Boston Harbor Shipyard and Marina in the summer of 2018. They transformed a 15,000 square foot formerly condemned space into a vast and welcoming venue to see and experience large scale art in East Boston. So during the pandemic, the site has been used as a food distribution site to address a direct need within the East Boston community, which has experienced one of the highest rates of COVID-19 in Boston. In partnership with community organizations in East Boston and the museum's caterer, which is called the Catered Affair, more than 2,000 boxes of much needed fresh produce and dairy were delivered to East Boston families through spring and summer, and the delivery continued all the way through the spring of 2021.
So the Fort Garland Museum, it became a community access site for the San Luis Valley College students. Those specifically that needed digital access, digital connections to attend their college classes once they had shifted to remote learning. So this museum stepped in for that. History Colorado Center again, once school shut down, a lot of districts had scrambled to distribute laptops so students could engage in schooling from home. After about a year, there was no site for this remote learning. The museum stepped in. So 5 of the History Colorado sites across the state became drop-off sites for donated laptops, which they then in turn donated back to students in need for remote learning.
So the museum, I was switching now to more of a tech support view. The Ministry of Culture in Argentina launched a new call for its Points of Culture program, which provides financial and technical support for the implementation of community cultural projects. As a notable institutionalized example of the Latin American tradition of community arts, a focus on Puntos de Cultura provides an entry point to Latin American perspectives on the social and caring role of culture, thus allowing a contextualized analysis of culture and care at a time of crisis. It aims to answer these questions. What actions is the government taking in order to care for cultural organizations, cultural workers, and the communities they serve? What local understandings of culture underpin such policy decisions? And finally, what have been the results and responses to such policies so far?
Thank you. Now we invite more from you. Can you provide examples of your organization or examples that you saw from other organizations that provided great service to their communities in times of need? I think we've got a few ideas in the chat, Eric.
Yeah, let me share those out for y'all. We got Laura Brooks at the Museum of Photographic Arts. We have launched a spooky gallery ghost hunt. They were kind enough to share the Instagram link there for y'all. Stephanie Wood, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, donated a truckload of PPE from our research labs to local healthcare facilities. We got Emily Tremaine, Carnegie Science Center's Buell Planetarium does a weekly video called Bite Size Buell, where they take short tours around the galaxy, read a story, or talk about astronomy in the news for visitors that can't make it into the dome. Got a link for that as well. And then Patrick, the National EMP Network, is running a fundraiser this month to fund a new initiative designed to eliminate unpaid internships. They'll direct funds to a new program that helps orgs update their internship models to include pay, and will also provide stipends to folks who are stuck in unpaid internships. We got Christine here. At the Albright Knox, our art truck kept on rolling and brought art kits and supplies to food distribution sites. Now I'll throw it back to y'all.
Excellent. Let's go to the next section, which we call Reckoning, which highlights programs or efforts addressing issues of museums' evolving role in society. One is cultivating empathy. The Minneapolis Institute of Arts asked, can the visual arts foster empathy and understanding? The MIA are leading initiatives to develop research and share strategies for cultivating empathy in art museums. Empathy is a complex concept, and even the experts disagree on how to define it, as it has many types and aspects. But some psychologists believe that by engaging emotionally and cognitively with works of art, we can develop skills that deepen our understanding of other people, past and present. Recognizing this power of art at MIA has been experimenting with empathy interventions in the development of programs, tours, and exhibitions. They're working to weave empathy into their processes through practices like community listening sessions and advisory groups, then study how empathy manifests for visitors in their galleries. In the process, they're valuing and welcoming diverse perspectives, recognizing that staff does not always represent their communities. Or according to Mia, they are constantly learning through different projects, but it's essential for them to incorporate diverse viewpoints, cultural expertise, and lived experiences into their development process.
So the Walker Art Center has developed the Walker Reader, and this is the editorial art that really features debates on Indigenous art or how museums are responding to the Me Too movement. So it is a digital magazine. They described it as art isn't just what's on the walls. Art is the whole collection of experiences and ideas and principles, and a museum's digital and physical programming have to operate as co-equals. The New York Times did name the Walker Reader website the world's best during COVID.
The Museum of the City of New York did a wonderful kind of exhibition, documenting the beginning of the pandemic. New York Response, the first 6 months, examines the events of 2020 and the pandemic through the eyes of over 100 New Yorkers. The exhibition was completely crowdsourced. Objects submitted by the public to the museum included items like masks, photographs, videos, and other artworks. The objective of the exhibition was to capture and display how New Yorkers coped, survived, and forged a better future ahead during a time where social justice was at the forefront while dealing with a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. The Anacostia Community Museum for the People is an outdoor exhibit that seeks to examine food and their community's relationship with it. The outdoor exhibition was created and opened during the museum's closure due to COVID-19. The exhibition aims to introduce food justice issues that their community in Washington, D.C. have been facing. Local issues like there both being an overabundance of food and a staggering number of people who are struggling to find their next meal. This reality has only worsened with the COVID-19 pandemic. The exhibition also introduces local community members and their ideas to making the food system more just and sustainable for their community.
So Mount Cuba Center, which was mentioned earlier, is a botanical garden in northern Delaware. They formed an initiative called Bridges, which is an inclusion initiative that is made up of change pods, where small cross-departmental groups take a look at ways to be inclusive in different areas of the organization. So the areas include workplace culture, accessibility, vendor and supply diversity, indigenous peoples, botany, native plants, vegetable gardens, community gardens, teen and children engagement, internal and external communications, and job shadowing and mentorship. Mount Cuba again. If anybody has questions about Mount Cuba, you can talk to Kyle because he works there. So Mount Cuba is continuing to do a lot of work internally to ensure equity, accessibility, and ultimately be a great place to work. So they did win Top Places to Work in 2020. And this is part of a small change they're making that they feel will make a really big difference. So this included a project where they worked with community members to change their security team. So the uniforms are now green and blue. They were black, but the community felt they were too closely resembled to law enforcement. And they also dropped officer from the title.
The Asian Art Museum, the museum I work at, was founded more than 50 years ago when collector Avery Brundage donated nearly 8,000 artworks to the city of San Francisco to found the museum. Although Brundage's stated goal was to create a bridge of understanding between the US and Asia, a closer view of his actions revealed that he held racist, sexist, and anti-Semitic beliefs that directly contradicted the museum's mission and values. In 2020, the museum removed a bust of Brundage's lobby and initiated a public phase of a thorough re-examination of his troubling legacy, specifically through our Rehistory Project, a staff-driven initiative to examine this legacy and expressed through an ongoing series of public programs and a commitment to updating the public narrative of the museum's history in an open and transparent way.
So there's many micro grant programs that had popped up during the pandemic to really support furloughed or laid off workers in the field. And these mainly, from what I saw, were grassroots initiatives by small organizations. Museum Council of Philadelphia was one such organization that popped up. Locally, they raised $13,000 for the local community and provided they were only $50 gifts to those that submitted requests, no questions asked. We did hear back at the time I was part of that group that it helped them get food for the week. It was very helpful, even though it was a smaller amount. But there were many other similar initiatives that had popped up. There was the Museum Worker Relief Fund, which raised $77,000. The Tenement Museum Union raised $35,000. The Brooklyn Museum $79,000, and the MoCA Union raised $20,000. So a side note to that, I will just say that despite the success of these, and it was very lovely to see the community stepping up, I do think it illustrates a structural issue in the field that the museum workers were digging into our own pockets to help our own. So side note. Back to the Walker. This is, as many know, a contemporary art gallery in Minneapolis. So they were pretty close to the heart of the protest, city and the wider demonstrations around the globe. So following a lot of criticism of the Minneapolis Police Department, and their overzealous response to the protests in the area, the management team at the Walker decided to cut ties with the city's police, and they said it would no longer cooperate with the police until it implemented long-lasting and meaningful changes. It had said that individual officers needed to be held accountable for their violent actions where appropriate. And after this, the Minneapolis Institute of Art also followed suit. Over to the Smithsonian. So Black Lives Matter protests, they were happening everywhere, but they were happening very often in DC and around the Smithsonian. So they had begun collecting these signs and other material from the protest site around the White House. As the curators are kind of going through all of it and determining what should be put into the collection. The New York Times had reported that curators from the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Anacostia Community Museum, and the National Museum of American History are among those surveying the fences, collecting artifacts that were posted along these fences. Over to Wanessa.
Oh, okay, got it. So we're here at the Bronx Museum of the Arts, and they're addressing internal change with new job positions that directly tackle social issues. It recently created the social justice creator role to honor the museum's former director, Holly Block, who was a well-known champion of artists, as well as the social equity and impact. So she says that my role as a curator at the museum is to uphold those values and integrate them into every exhibition and program that I organize. That was actually said by Jasmine Wahi, the Bronx Museum's first ever Holly Block social justice curator. My function is to create visual conversations around visibility, intersectionality, and agency within narrative frameworks. I'm interested in highlighting both artists and communities that have historically been relegated to the margins and peripheries of mainstream discourse or only been seen through the lens of otherness. So by creating positions like Wahi's, may only support symbolic efforts to be inclusive to members of minority groups, which creates the impression of diversity rather than actual systemic change. But it is a start. The Bristol Museum in the UK actually turned its lights purple in an act of solidarity with the people of Minneapolis. So Bristol has been one of the centers of the Black Lives Matter protests in the UK, largely due to its high racial diversity and historic connections with the slave trade. So Bristolians even took the law into their own hands by forcibly removing a statue erected to celebrate a 17th century slave trader, Edward Colston. The Bristol Museum and Art Gallery has long attempted to contextualize the city's wealth within its exhibitions as one that is built on the economics of slavery. And so, as mentioned before, on June the 2nd, 2020, the museum turned its lights purple in an act of solidarity with the people of Minneapolis.
Thanks, Wanessa. I just want to give folks a heads up. We've got about 7 more ideas in this section, and then we'll open it up to you. I hope you can stay past quarter of the hour so that we can continue the conversation and hear more from you. But if you need to go in a couple of minutes, feel free. Nicole, can you confirm that we will share the PowerPoint with?
Yes, we will share the PowerPoint. And for those counting, we are well past 60 ideas.
and then also, the PowerPoint in the notes section includes links and notes on each one of these ideas if you need more information about each of them. Thank you.
And similar to what Nicole mentioned about the Smithsonian, the National Museum of American History in Washington is building on its collection of protest art. So the museum already has roughly 300,000 objects in their political history collection and have just added 30 pieces from Lafayette Square, the insurrection on January 6th, and the aftermath of it. It is looking to collect objects and stories that help future generations remember and contextualize January 6th and its aftermath. Conservators were also cleaning up the corrosive damage of pepper spray and tear gas on the building's historic art. Statues, murals, historic benches, and original shutters all suffered varying degrees of damage, primarily from pepper spray, accretions, and residue from tear gas and fire extinguishers.
So the Anacostia Community Museum has been mentioned a couple times, but they have launched a Moments of Resilience project, hashtag Moments of Resilience, where they're building this digital archive of community stories. They really want to make sure that all voices are included. So they have gotten stories from all over, but they're really trying to focus on that local community. So some of these have included firsthand accounts of volunteering on the front lines or what it's like to teach remotely, but something to certainly check out and dive into if you have time. The New York Historical Society in Manhattan also collecting protest items related to the killing of George Floyd and the subsequent protests and deaths around these individuals, along with how people are responding to systemic racism across the world.
And here's one for my museum, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, in a need to pivot a program and make it virtual. We put together, if I might say so myself, a wonderful program called Witness: Spirituals and the Classical Music Tradition. It was a free digital program that explored the ways that some Black American composers have found inspiration in the rich tradition of spirituals. The Gardner Museum builds on its ongoing partnership with the Boston-based ensemble Castle of Our Skins to create 4 short videos exploring the repertoire. I would highly recommend that. Another from our Boston neighbor, the Museum of Fine Arts, where they had a virtual program called Art for This Moment, where great works of art can deepen our understanding of the world around us. And as we confront the current events shaping this period in history, art can offer solace, clarity, and perspective. Through Art for This Moment, the Museum of Fine Arts staff, artists, and others share objects from across the MFA's collection that carry personal significance and global resonance. Another, not very far from us, institution, the Massachusetts Historical Society, offered a series on confronting racial injustice. Massachusetts is often heralded as the home of the abolition movement and one of the first states to abolish slavery, yet the Commonwealth's economy developed in collaboration with states that claimed people as property. This series explores how enslavement and white supremacy shaped the history of Massachusetts and how they continue to shape its present. From the first program, Slavery and Wealth Creation, to the final event, the Charles Stewart Story, White Lies and Black Lives, the series asks us all to understand, acknowledge, and confront racial injustice. And another museum called the Hunterian also did something about adding someone to their staff. They appointed a curator of discomfort to address how its collections helped sustain a legacy of white supremacy. And I believe lastly, we're back to the Walters Art Museum again, kind of putting their money where their mouth is. And one cultural institution that is already made DEAI part of their investment strategy. In 2015, the Walters launched an investment manager diversity initiative, placing over 10% of its endowment with diverse owned managers. The Walters learned all they had to do was signal to their current investment consultant that manager diversity was a priority. The consultant readily brought forward fund managers with the required longevity and performance track records. 5 diverse managers were retained, and the museum reports extremely successful performance.
Thanks, Wanessa, and thank you all for joining us today. We want to end with inviting more ideas from you. Eric, I believe there's a couple more in the chat.
Yeah, we got a couple. Starting off with Kyle of VEX, who's very happy to chat with anyone regarding the Mount Cuba Center and what they're up to. We got Patrick, who's grateful for museum workers and museum unions for doing their work in regarding to supporting furloughed workers. We have Natalie. Here at the Manitoba Museum, we asked people to donate pandemic items for the collection, as our history curators found that they had not one artifact on the Spanish flu pandemic. We also got a grant for 4 days of free admission and special programming surrounding residential schools and our new day for truth and reconciliation here in Canada. And then lastly, we have Linda, my apologies. When the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum were asked by our school system to create a program on LGBTQ history, we realized there wasn't much in our or other historic ship collections, which led to the development of a special program for NYC public high schools, examining the structural reasons those stories were absent, how to recognize when voices are missing from the narrative, and where to find some of them. Along the same line, we developed another program, Double Victory, Black Americans in World War II.
Awesome. Any final thoughts from our guests and or the audience? We welcome any more ideas. If not, thank you for joining us. Keep up the great work. Hopefully the future is much brighter, and maybe next year we can meet in person and also share even better ideas about reopening and reconnecting with our audiences.
Yes,
thank you all.
Thank you, Tim, for organizing. This is Tim's
Yes.
Tim's baby.
Yes, thank you.
So we do. I know this is a fast way to start off the conference, high level in some regards, but we hope it inspires you as you dive in to very specific topics tomorrow, just to see what everybody else is doing. I do want to thank you, Wanessa. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Nicole.
And for those that are staying on, just know tonight we have a dry t-shirt contest. And
it's an idea for next year.
There we go. So bring your t-shirts, bring your fun t-shirts, and museum quizzo. So that is happening later. It should be in the links you received in your email. So we hope to see you all tonight, and we'll resume sessions tomorrow afternoon. So thank you all, and we'll see you all later.
Oh, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.